Calaroga Shark Media.
Digging the mix of stories today. A little different today on a Monday. Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. I take no joy in this first story. Christina Pazzitzky and Tom Segura are divorcing after nearly 20 years of marriage. On the podcast Your Mom's House, Christina P told guest host Duncan Trussell she wanted to be transparent with fans. Christina said, "I just wanted to let you know and the other staff members here that the rumors are true. Your daddy and I are divorcing, but it's not your fault. It's not your fault, guys in the booth. We still love each other very much. We're just going to live in separate homes, but we're still your mommies." She then got emotional and teared up and said, "Yes, Tom and I are divorcing, and it is extremely sad. Sorry, I didn't want to cry this soon. It is very sad. That being said, we've tried to work it out for several years for the sake of our children and our family. We gave it all we could, but we just couldn't work things out. We are no longer a couple. Look, we had 20 amazing years together, and that's a really good run, I think, in a marriage." She continued, "From what I understand, some people are taking sides. Team Christina or Team Tom. Please don't do that. There's no need, because Tom and I do not hate each other. We have a family. Tom and I are amicable. Just so everyone knows, this is not an ugly divorce. We're cool, dude. We'll survive. We'll get through this stuff like we've gotten through everything else in life. This is just an unfortunate thing, but we're going to be okay." For those of you who have listened to us from the very beginning, you've been with Tom and me through getting married, living in Silver Lake as two broke comics, births and deaths, tragic accidents, cancer, COVID, all of it. And you know what? Some effing cancer couldn't kill me. You think a dude's gonna effing take me out? No. She confirmed that she continues to co-host the main show with Tom Segura. Said we're still gonna have a good effing time because we ain't dead yet. That's gonna be hard having all that play out in public. The Times of London went to go see Dave Chappelle in London. Here's an opening paragraph. "Dave Chappelle takes care to avoid anyone recording his stand-up shows, insisting that audiences lock away their phones in the secure pouches he provides. On the evidence of this slapdash London appearance, though, he takes less care with the shows themselves." Wow. The Times continues, "He did warn us. He began by saying, 'I haven't done this for a while.' Towards the end, he admitted, 'I got to think of a closer, and I don't have one. Can I hang out for a minute?' The Times writes he hung out by drifting from one idea to another, or he responded to a heckle or two, including one about appearing at last year's Riyadh Comedy Festival. Apparently to that, Dave said, 'Are you getting me for doing it like all the other whites?' More from the Times. His skill when his storytelling found its focus only made the digressions that dominated more frustrating. Much of the show was motored by his fame and infamy. Baseball cap on head, cigarette on the go. He said he wouldn't talk about transgender issues. He then touched on a joke suggesting Caitlyn Jenner's change of gender had been more easily accepted in America than Muhammad Ali's change of name. I think that was in the last special. Maybe I'm imagining that. And explained why he meant it as a joke about racism rather than gender. Dave said, "I thought I was punching up. They thought I was punching down." Okay, yeah, so that's, yep, okay. Yep, I didn't imagine it was in the previous special. Times is not happy. They said, "This was thin stuff for big prices. My seat in row Z cost £120. Plus, we had to wait 100 minutes for him to start, following good support sets by Cypher Sounds and Michelle Wolf, an interval, then a call-and-response musical mashup from his onstage DJ that got us up on our feet for what felt would be brief, but carried on for a punishing 15 minutes. 2 stars out of 5. Yikes." Andrew Schulz, called by the New York Times America's foremost political journalist. They're never going to live that down. Has commented on Indiana Fever basketball star Caitlin Clark. On the Flagrant podcast, Schulz weighed in about how Clark has been villainized by conservatives for not supporting their side. Schulz said it was so unfair what they did to Caitlin Clark. She literally did the thing that every conservative pundit was asking all the black athletes to do around Black Lives Matter. Remember, they were like, just shut up and dribble? She literally shuts up and dribbles, and then all the pundits are like, "You coward, how dare you not say anything?" Schulz asked, "Do you want athletes to just play ball, or do you want them involved in politics?" See, that's why he's America's foremost political journalist. Stavros Halkias is in the Anthony Bourdain movie. He plays sous chef Dimitri. Stavros called the character blue collar and a locker room guy. He's there to haze Tony, but then throw his arm around him at the end. I wanted to recreate the vibe of that guy who's not quite mentor level, but you do look up to him in certain ways. There's so much about Bourdain it would be kind of insulting to try and get everything like word perfect, exactly right imitation. Our movie's about the vibe of that specific summer and that period in his life, and everybody's life who's 19 and trying to figure it out. So that's how I approached my guy. I wanted the vibe of that guy who's going to bust your chops at your job, but ultimately, if we get in a fight at a rival restaurant, you know I got Tony's back. Can Stavros cook? He said, "I mean, I can make a very complex snack. The plating is very sloppy. It's more about the taste than anything else." From the LA Times, Anthony Jeselnik gets a feature about his book club, the Times tells us. Anthony Jeselnik couldn't sleep. It was making him crazy. Hoping to find relief, Jeselnik sought help from a therapist he assumed would guide him back to a healthy sleep schedule. Instead, he encountered an apathy that stunned him. Jeselnik recalled the therapist saying, "So what if you don't sleep? If you wake up, read a book. Find ways to be productive in your loneliness." And I guess Anthony Jeselnik started reading. He has started a popular online book club, Jeselnik Book Club, which reminds me, whatever happened to John Mulaney Book Club? John, you have Google. Why don't you tell us? You're hosting the show. Seems like it's still going. Just last week, John Mulaney on Twitter wrote, "Any and all Mulaney reads ers. North Sun or The Voyage of the Whale Ship Esther is my July must read. This book is so bat crazy, funny, bizarre, violent, reckless, and very moving." John says, "I haven't read Moby Dick because whatever, but Ethan Rutherford's description of catching a whale or failing to catch a whale is one of the most visceral things I've ever absorbed." John then added he was very carsick on his way to Saratoga. There's a video of John. He seems to be on the beach. He's wearing a hoodie and shorts. Looks pretty breezy on the beach there. I guess I could have pulled the audio, but I didn't because we're in the middle of an Anthony Jeselnik story. This wasn't a John Mulaney story at all. Jeselnik's got his own book club, and it is titled The Jeselnik Book Club. Easy to remember. Jeselnik says, "My goal was to curate and give people their best shot at enjoying reading." People will say, "Oh, I don't like reading books." You're choosing the wrong books. In 2022, best-selling writer Isaac Fitzgerald released American Rambler, Walking the Trail of Johnny Appleseed. Fitzgerald said, "A friend texted me that Anthony Jeselnik, a comedian whom I loved but had never met nor interacted with, shouted out his love of my memoir, Dirtbag, Massachusetts. I was thrilled. At my events, both in Chicago and throughout the rest of the year, more and more people in my signing lines told me they'd heard of the book from Jeselnik's podcast. I was also buoyed by how many of the people in the signing lines were young men. Now Fitzgerald and Jeselnik are friends." Fitzgerald said, "The man is a real lover of books with excellent taste and, unsurprisingly, confidence in his convictions." Earlier this year, Jeselnik hosted a book launch event for the American Rambler book. Fitzgerald said, "I think Jeselnik may have single-handedly invented a new way to do literary events. I don't know what to call it, a literary roast? Everyone laughed for an hour straight. That is fun." Now, this is interesting. Jeselnik talked about his own career. He said, "I was trying to be the devil on stage and somehow ended up as likable anyway. Edgar Allan Poe wrote these books about psychopaths and killers. Authors do not equate their persona. I'm trying to make reading cool again. Reading is a solitary act in the way that stand-up comedy is a solitary art form. There are so few books for guys that are literary. There's a lot of John Grisham and Jack Reacher, but that's not something literary that a guy can sink his teeth into. If it's well-written and the writer's great, then I'll go on any kind of journey they take me on. I don't always understand everything that I read either, but reading a great writer, it's like listening to classical music." A little bit more about this, about Jeselnik talking about the end of his comedy career. I will save that for tomorrow. Jenny Yang is out on a national summer comedy tour. She turns grocery stores into comedy clubs for a night. This is fun. She says, "I go to buy a bunch of small snacks and shrimp chips and throw it into the audience every time I feel like a joke didn't land. I mean, this is my dream." It's the Good Egg Immigrant Grocery Store stand-up comedy tour. Love it. The tour will wrap September 26th back in L.A., with Yang filming a performance for a proposed comedy special. She touches on topics ranging from infertility to awareness of immigrant experiences in the U.S. Yang said, "People come into this art form as a stand-up comedian for different reasons. I'm of the mind that my stand-up comedy is just an extension of my values, and I believe in punching up, not down." At a supermarket in Minneapolis, the store manager said they reconfigured shelves near the checkout lanes to fit 150 chairs. He says everybody got in line to buy some snacks and some drinks. A few people even did a bit of grocery shopping. Yang said, "Just renting a spotlight makes a show. How fun is it that I'm literally doing stand-up comedy next to an aisle that sells fungus and 5 pounds of rice? That sounds like a good time." Vogue asked Mary Beth Barone, "Hey, a lot of your comedy is about love and relationships. Where are you with dating now?" Mary Beth Barone said, "I'm single. I'm 35. My choices are staring me in the face. Sometimes I think maybe being a comedian and talking about my life on stage and having this podcast where we're pretty transparent is scaring away potential romantic partners who could be good for me. But this is who I am. And if my job doesn't fit in with that person's idea of what they want in a partner, then they're probably not the right partner for me." She adds, "I do feel like we're at a really weird moment in dating culture where there seems to be an endless amount of amazing women, and the number of male counterparts just seems to continue to dwindle. I'm a romantic, but I think my hope is starting to waver a little bit. You just have to keep the hope alive." They also asked her about crowd work. Mary Beth Barone said, "People really do tell me stuff. They want me to know their secrets. That's even in business meetings. I'll meet an executive and we'll get into it about a good date they had last night, and I'm invested too. There's a lot of bad press for parasocial relationships, but I've just got the benefits of it." A much less fun story involves Amanda Knox. You may recall the famous case. Amanda Knox was arrested after her roommate's death. Knox was convicted of murder and sexual assault in 2009. alongside her then-boyfriend, but after years of legal battles, they were cleared of all the charges in 2015. Knox is now a comedian performing at the Edinburgh Fringe. The sister of the murdered student Meredith Kercher has accused Amanda Knox of normalizing and trivializing violence against women. She was asking for the Edinburgh Fringe show to be withdrawn. In an interview with The Telegraph, Amanda Knox said she believed Miss Kercher would appreciate the show because it grapples with what it means to be a young woman, and it's honest. Stephanie Kercher said, "It's left a massive void in our lives, and Amanda's naturally free to continue with her life as she wishes, but I think the problem with this particular project is that it's comedy, and while I appreciate comedy's there to push the boundaries, it very much normalizes and trivializes violence against women, and Meredith in particular, and I think in this case, where it's not a generic topic, it's targeting an individual traumatic case and an individual person and family, and I feel very strongly that Meredith wouldn't agree with that. Meredith absolutely wouldn't find these topics of any comedy value." Kercher added, "If someone else was doing the show specifically against Meredith, I would still feel the same. It's obviously an added wound that it's coming from her at the same time, but I do feel very strongly that it should be something that's not given a platform." A different person was convicted of Kercher's murder in 2008. That person was released from prison in 2021 after serving 13 years of a 16-year term. And that is your comedy news for today. See you tomorrow.